do you practice any magic or magic rituals or anything? Do you go to the Black Cauldron?
Oh God, the guy who runs that. The guy that runs that place.
He's a COS, isn't he?
I don't know him personally. Everything I've ever heard from anyone who's ever interacted with that place has been negative. I'll put it that way.
I've actually had good experiences there.
Great. Like
just getting little trinkets. But do you practice magic or do rituals or anything?
Okay. So as far as ritual practice goes, you have some people who their Satanism is very much tied up in ritual practice. Ritual practice to non-theistic Satanists is very much about psychodrama.
Psychodrama.
It can be, achieving catharsis. It can be, just having pleasant experiences that are ritualized, having a way of doing things that makes sense to you. There's some people who are very much tied up in ritual practice and who very much enjoy it. I'm not one of those people. I find that the ritual practice that I enjoy is more the public performance kind of stuff. It's almost like a performance art.
You do that?
Yeah, I was part of a Black Mass in 2019 at Brash Brewery. We put on a Black Mass, and that was a lot of fun.
And for people who don't know what that is, kind of myself included, what is a Black Mass and what is the goal of it?
Oh gosh. A Black Mass is kind of like in some ways, it's sort of the king daddy of blasphemous performances.
Okay.
It's something that historically, again, those out groups, they were accused of doing, an inversion of Catholic Mass, like as a desecratory kind of ritual. Now, was there any actual evidence that this occurred? No. And then you have it made its way into fiction. There's an old book called Là-bas, means down there, that describes this very over the top perversion of a Catholic ritual, the Catholic Mass.
Mm-hmm.
And it has, all kinds of stuff in it that, no one could really get away with that publicly. And a lot of it's very implausible too.
Is it like sex stuff?
Yeah, the version of a Black Mass in Là-bas was very heavily sexualized.
What I haven't read it.
I mean, one of the examples there was
give me the nastiest one.
Oh gosh. Inserting the host into the rectal cavity of the person who's acting as the altar.
And you did that?
No, I'm saying that's what people who are accused of being Satanists, people would point to and say, you do these things. And the people would be like, what the hell are you talking about? So the Black Mass has this history of being almost like a boogeyman. It's like a bugaboo. It barely existed.
We would like to take a moment to discuss the Black Mass as described in the podcast. Obviously, our guest said that this can be a very varied ritual based on who is presenting it, but we wanted to go through a couple of different documents here talking about the Black Mass and what they might do. As you know, our guest, Casey, talked about desecration of the host. She mentioned putting the host into the rectum. Well, we wanted to figure all that out. So here we have a document called the Satanic Rituals Outrider. And this was published in 2019. Got just a lot of stuff about Satanism in here, different things. We'll be going to the Missa Solemnis, the Black Mask. And we're going to head on down to page 34. So as you can see, we've got a lot of stuff here. It's performed with great pageantry and solemn dignity and is very precise in every detail. Every act, every movement must be deliberate. You need all these things, and you need them to actually be consecrated from the Roman Catholic Church. I'm not sure how they get that. This is a very interesting thing. We won't take too much time on it, but there are some parts of the Mass that I think need to be gone into, and they're very out there. So we're just getting into it. As you can see, the red is what the priest or deacons will say, and then text down here are directions. There's a large association of sex in the Black Mass. It seems that they would like to pervert every part of the Mass. I think that this is a rebellion against the Catholic Church as well as the Christian religion. Obviously, we can understand why. It starts to get pretty interesting when we actually do get into the desecration of the host. So we're going to come over here, and the priest takes the host and begins the desecration. This must be done with anger, vehemence, wrath, and hatred. He raises the host to the Baphomet and says, I'm not going to read all that. We'll go down here to the other directions. The priest thrusts the host into the labia of the altar, who, removing her hands from the candle holders, proceeds to masturbate herself to climax, or else, maintaining her original position, allows the priest to masturbate her, employing the host as a device. As the priest finishes the desecration, the deacon lights the white candle and prepares the small incense burner on the altar with charcoal and incense. He does not light the mixture. Then the deacon begins a rhythmic beating of the gong while the priest drops the host into the small bowl and, using the pestle, proceeds to grind it into a completely pulverized state, swearing blasphemies as he does so. The deacon and subdeacon also wear the most vile obscenities while the priest is grinding the host. When the host has been completely pulverized, the priest adds it to the mixture of charcoal and incense and sets it aflame using the white candle. When the mixture is completely burnt, the priest extinguishes the white candle and, turning to the congregation, utters the purported last words of the miserable swine upon the cross. The priest takes the sword and calls forth the four princes of hell in the manner set forth in the Satanic Bible, and that they may bear witness to the consecratio. We'll go over here to the top left. The priest masturbates in the darkness of his cloak until he reaches an ejaculation. The semen is caught in a deep silver spoon and placed upon the altar. The deacon offers the priest a towel to cleanse himself, after which he begins the second offertorium. The priest calls upon Satan to come forth and bless the sacrificial offerings by reciting the Veni. The priest raises the spoon slightly before him. The priest raises the spoon on high to the Baphomet, and the deacon strikes the gong. Taking the chalice from the altar, the priest goes to the epistle side of the altar. The deacon pours wine from the cruet into the chalice of ecstasy. The priest returns to the center of the altar and raises the chalice slightly before him. We're going to come over here. The priest pours the semen into the chalice of ecstasy. The priest faces the congregation. The priest turns to face the altar. The deacon turns to the subdeacon and gives him the kiss of brotherhood. The priest takes the chalice in his hands. The priest drinks the entire contents of the chalice, including semen. He then returns to the epistle side of the altar, where the deacon refills the chalice with wine. The priest returns to the center of the altar, where, after offering the chalice to Baphomet, offers it first to the deacon and then to the subdeacon, who drain the contents. The communion thus completed, the priest raises his arms to the sigil of Baphomet in the sign of the horns. As you can see, this is a very interesting ritual. And of course, like we said, it varies from group to group. However, this is a ritual that is taken rather seriously. As our guest said, it is used to rebel against the church, the Christian church, the Catholic Church specifically. However, ejaculating on statues, putting bread, wafers, host of that nature up people's genitalia. That is rather intense. So we just thought we would give you a little insight into some of how the black masses are created.
And most of what actually existed as the Black Mass was just a concoction, like made up by people who wanted to accuse people of like shenanigans. So is there a single codified ritual for Satanists, even like TST Satanists or COS Satanists, that is the Black Mass? No, that doesn't exist. So what a Black Mass tends to be is a public blasphemous kind of like performance that does mirror in some ways a Catholic Mass, but takes parts of it and turns it on its head. Like one of the things that might happen during a Black Mass is a desecration of the host, like passing around the wine and the wafers and casting them to the floor and trotting upon them might be a thing that happens during a Black Mass. The altar for these, the Mass tends to be a nude human form because, what's one of the most demonized things within Catholicism is the sexuality and the naked body. So, in a Black Mass, people might adore the thing that is so demonized.
Can I interject one thing? That kind of reminds me of some very fundamentalist Christian people that I remember reading about going and burning. They had a Quran burning. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, shoot.
That's been something that's been thrown our direction.
I don't agree with Quran burning at all. But the desecration thing, don't you would that be a little bit similar in a way?
Okay, so if I lived in a country that was an Islamist theocracy, I would be very sympathetic to Quran burnings. In this country, Islam doesn't have that political power. In fact, they're a demonized minority group. And I feel, it's not that I agree with a lot of the practice and beliefs of Islam in any way. But I think that people's right to practice that religion is very much in danger constantly. I think that they're targeted for, reasons that don't have to do with their beliefs, but rather have to do with, ethnic identity a lot of times. So I feel, I feel like it's apples and oranges, okay? Because the question isn't about what are the beliefs. It's much more of like an identity thing. And, there have been cases of Satanists going and offering protection to Muslim people who have been, threatened in their communities. And I don't want to go too deeply into that. It's been a while since I've read about this, and I don't want to give like the wrong, facts here. But, I feel very strongly like going into a synagogue and desecrating that, that's not an act of, for me, that would not be an act of blasphemy that would be meaningful on any personal level. That would be a hate crime. Now, I understand that some Catholic people may feel that by having a Black Mass or by having a ritual like that it's the same thing. I understand why they feel that it's the same. I don't feel like it's the same. I am not subjected to persecution from a Jewish institution the way that I'm susceptible, or the way that I'm put under persecution by Christian institutions. It's just not the same. It's not comparable at all. I've never had Jewish people show up to any of our events with signs, threatening us. I've never had Muslim people show up to any of our events, like saying that they should take our children away, or anything like that. I think that you can't divorce power from this equation. And we do have members who blasphemy just doesn't mean anything to them, and they aren't interested and they don't practice any of it. I think that for someone who grew up in a very oppressive religious tradition, I think that blasphemy is a very healthy way of reclaiming your personal power. And I think it's a very healthy form of self-expression.